This video is brought to you by Roon 2.0, the revolutionary music player designed for true music fanatics. Click to roonlabs.com for more information.
No, that video title is not clickbait. Vicoustic, the Portuguese company, they're based about, 20 kilometers from here. They really did fundamentally change the acoustics of this room. They changed everything. And today we're going to talk about it. So back in January, I got a phone call from Steve Guttenberg, the Audiophilliac, linked below to his channel. And he was asking after my health and my eye, and I told him that I was having the stitches out at the end of March. So from now, I've still got about 3, maybe 4 weeks to go. And then once we dispensed with the kind of the pleasantries and the health issues, Steve said, "Look, John, can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, fire away." And he said, "Look, what do you think about your room treatments from Vicoustic now that you've lived with them for, well, I think at that point it was well over a year?" And I replied, "There's no way I could possibly live without them now. No way." Which is why when I completed the paperwork on buying this apartment last November, the very first email I sent was to Vicoustic to organise the treatment of this room. And that was before I'd even set foot in it. It's a good job, right? Because as we know, this room, well, up until now, did sound absolutely horrific. So I'd planned to have Vicoustic come and treat this room from I think way back in November. And then what I did back then is I sent them the dimensions of the room, some photographs, some details about the makeup of the walls, because it's gyprock. I thought it was stone initially, but it's not, it's gyprock. And then stone behind that. And then whilst I was in hospital having my eye operated on, I received a PDF proposal from them, which detailed everything they were planning to install and also what it would look like. Because basically Vicoustic made all the acoustic decisions about what goes where in this room, because they're the experts and not me. Although obviously I did have a say on the appearance of those panels. So I got to choose the colours and the finishes. Now for me, one golden rule was anything that goes on the ceiling has to be white. And the other thing that I wanted a dark wood. I knew I was going to put a green rug down, so I thought, well, why not go with some dark green panels as well on the walls? So the aim of this Vicoustic install was to tame the first reflections that were contributing to a very high reverb time. If you watch my previous 3 videos on this topic, you will know that this room previously had a reverb time of around 1 second, maybe just above. And that's between 300 Hertz and 4 kilohertz. So essentially the mid-range and the treble. And the technical aim of treating this room was to get that reverb time sitting somewhere between 0.3 seconds and 0.6 seconds. And with a couple of exceptions, most of what has been installed in this room deals with absorption. So basically, you're sucking in the sound and not reflecting it back into the room. Now I've got my tablet here so that I don't make mistakes with the names of each product, because they are quite complicated. Vicoustic, to my mind, do have a fairly convoluted naming scheme for their products. But also, I'm going to put up some graphs that show the absorption coefficients of each one. So, for example, on the front wall, we've got something called Cinema Round Premium, and I've got 4 of them. And they're in green, or I think it's called musk green. Now, the absorption coefficient of this product, the Cinema Round Premium, starts at about 150 hertz, maybe 110 hertz, and slowly climbs until it gets to about 300 hertz, and that's where it hits 1. So above 300 hertz, all the way out to 1 kilohertz, it has an absorption coefficient of 1. That means it absorbs all of those frequencies. And I've got 4 of those on the front wall, 2 either side of a new product, a brand new product actually, I don't think it's even been launched yet, from Vicoustic called Vic Strip. And that's the wooden panel effect that you see behind me to which the TV is mounted. Now, it isn't just a wooden panel. There are several layers of PET foam behind it. And I believe that PET foam is made from recycled plastic bottles. But it goes further than that, as far as I understand it, because I am a bit hazy on the specifics of this. And I invite you to click the links in the description box below if you want to know the real details of this new product. Yes, there are different layers of PET foam, but there's also an air gap. And apparently that air gap also contributes to the absorption coefficient of this Vic Strip product. It's mounted in a metal frame. So you've got the wooden panels on the front, and then you've got layers of foam. And I believe mine was customized with an additional layer of foam for greater low frequency absorption. So back to my tablet here, and I note that the Vic Strip also has an absorption coefficient of 1 above 300 hertz. That means it's absorbing everything pretty much above 300 hertz. Now, this was the first wall, the front wall, that Vicoustic tackled when they came to fit out this room about a week ago. And there were 4 guys that turned up to do it. They did this wall in about 3 hours. It took a while because it's a fairly complex panel, especially the Vic Strip. And mounting the TV, there's a block behind the wooden strips on the front to which we drilled the mounting plate for the TV into, and then obviously the TV then hooks onto that. Now, I like that because I love the look of the wooden panel behind the TV. And I love the look of it so much, actually. I really wish I had this in Berlin, and I might still do that down the line as funds allow. Now, you might be curious to know what I heard in this room anecdotally from this front wall area, this big panel area being finished. And I did hear an improvement, but it wasn't night and day, blows it out of the water different to the naked room, because remember, we started with a completely empty room. I took all the furniture out, all the rug out, the Kallax, the hi-fi, and all the speakers. It was an empty room when we started. So obviously I'm just going on what I heard from the sound of voices in this room. So yeah, the front wall is important, but as we will see, you need to cover other surfaces to get the full effect. Now, also on the front wall, in each corner, so one there and then one out of frame over there, I've got something called Super Bass Extreme Ultra VMT. Told you it was complicated. These are big blocks, and these are targeting bass, and they're placed in the corners because that's where bass builds up. And in each corner, I've got a stack of 4. Now, normally they would only stack 3 high, but they've gone with 4, and the top one is then attached to the wall behind. You can't see it because occasionally, very occasionally, there are earthquakes in this country. And I don't want one of these sort of toppling over when I'm not here, or worse, when I am here. And this tackles bass. It really targets the 100 hertz region or thereabouts, because according to Vicoustic, 100 hertz is a problem area in many rooms. And according to their calculations, it was going to be a problem area in this room. So they put essentially 2 bass traps. And anybody familiar with acoustic panels will know that bass traps go in the front wall corners. Now, on the rear wall, which is here, which is right behind my couch, I've got 4 more of those Cinema Round Premium in green. Exactly the same as on the front wall here behind me. But I don't have the Vic Strip on the rear wall. I have something called Wavewood Ultralight, and that's in the dark Wenge finish. I don't know how you say that. Is it Wenge? I've got no idea. Anyway, That Wavewood ultralight panel, there's 4 of them in a square, they also target frequencies above 300 Hertz, but their absorption coefficient sort of ramps up from much lower than that. According to my graph on my tablet here, it ramps up to an absorption coefficient of 1 at around 500 or 600 Hertz, and then gently falls away again as the frequencies go higher. So it's not as absorptive as the green cushiony type panels. That's what I call them, cushiony type panels. That's my technical term, but they still absorb something. And I think the contrast, personally from an aesthetic point of view, the contrast between the green and the wood, I think looks really nice. Obviously, if you don't like it, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because you don't have to live here, and I do. But Vicoustic also spotted another problem area in this room, or a potential problem area, and it's over on the far side, in the far corner above my pellet burner. And that's where they also put another quad of the Wavewood ultralight. So there's 4 of those in a square over in that corner to stop reflections sort of coming off that rear right-hand wall and bouncing back into the room. And then the last and not to be forgotten surface that Vicoustic tackled was the ceiling. And what they've put up there is enormous. It's over 3 meters long, and it's a combination of 2 types of panels. And I'm going to go back to my tablet here for this. So we've got 2 rows of 6 Cinema Round Premium. So just like the green ones on the wall, but these are obviously in a sort of an off-white. And then we have an enormous diffuser, which comprises 12 multi-fuser DC3. And yes, that is styrofoam. And if we look at its graph and we see the absorption coefficient, it's pretty low. It sort of starts at about 0.1 and then ramps up to about 0.4 and then falls away again. But that's not what it's designed for. It's not designed to absorb sound. It's designed to spread sound around. And so the diffusion coefficient is around, from what I can tell from this graph, somewhere around 0.6 between 100 Hertz and 5K. So according to the graph that's supplied by Vicoustic, it's doing its job. So now we come to the all-important results. Now we'll tackle the measurement results first. I do have some audible stuff to show you and for you to listen to in a moment, but let's look at the measurements first. As you know, if you've seen my earlier videos, you will have seen me having taken measurements of the Jesco 6 in effectively an empty room. I'll put the graph on the screen now and you can see that the reverb time, this is the RT60 graph, the reverb time graph, the amount of time it takes for sounds to decay by 60 dB between 300 Hertz and 4 kilohertz, the mid-range, the treble. And you can see that it's around 1 second. I think it even goes up to like 1.1 second in various bits of that frequency range. And I've also put 2 dotted lines on this graph to show you the target zone that we're trying to hit with a treatment like this. So the front wall, the back wall, and then that little area over there and the ceiling have a combined effect. So I measure the Jesco 6 in this room with a microphone again at the listening position, which is here. And you can see from this graph that the RT60 is now completely within the target region. It is completely between 300 milliseconds or 0.3 seconds and 600 milliseconds or 0.6 seconds. And it never kind of goes below 300 or above 600 or 0.3 and 0.6. So as far as I'm concerned, from a measurement point of view, the Vicoustic fit out here, it just kicked a goal straight out of the gate. You know, I'm very, very happy with that measurement result. But Vicoustic also had the foresight, more foresight than me actually, to do a clap test on camera before and after the install. So this is what this room sounded like with a clap test before the install. Now have a listen to what this room sounded like from the same position. So the microphone was over here and the Vicoustic chappie who was clapping, Mario, thank you Mario, was stood somewhere over here. He did a clap again. Now have a listen to what it sounds like with the fit out completed. Frankly, if that doesn't impress you, I don't know what will, because I think that is a dramatic result. That is what I would call a night and day difference. I would say that the sound of this room with the Vicoustic install does blow the sound of the room without it out of the water. This fit out cost me roughly €5,000, but that's not including installation, I don't think, because the Vicoustic guys themselves don't normally do the fit outs. You have to work with your local reseller or local distributor, and they will put you in touch with people who can install it for you, or you can install it yourselves. I have no handyman skills, none. Now, before you lose your mind about the high price of this kind of thing, I would ask you to consider this, is that I've never heard an amplifier or a pair of speakers or a DAC or a phono stage or a turntable cartridge streamer have this degree of effect on what I hear in the listening seat. Ever. Not ever. Actually, this is even better than I have in Berlin, actually. The sound that I have now in my listening chair, I think, is just astonishing. And I think the audiophile world at large, for people who can afford or do see the value in spending $5,000 on a bit of audio gear, they would be losing their minds if an amplifier could do this. They would be tearing their dealer's hand off in order to get one of these units. If it were a unit, if it were an amplifier or a DAC or a pair of speakers, they would be smashing their hands off to get that effect. I mean, the effect here is dramatic. I don't know of anything else that can drop the reverb time in such a way. Now, I must admit, yes, my room did have a very bad starting point, but that doesn't mean that the result that you would hear if you were to do this wouldn't be as fundamentally, life-changing. But of course, yes, it is visually intrusive. And I know for those of you who like to throw your wives under the bus about why you can't have this done, this isn't a reality for you. And I'm really sorry. I feel sorry for you a little bit. If you're a hi-fi person or an audiophile person and you want to get better sound, but your wife won't let you, apparently, do this kind of thing. Well, fair enough. Okay, cool. I understand you have to share your space with other people. I don't have, well, actually I do. I mean, I'm living here with my girlfriend, but she likes this. She doesn't mind it at all. So I guess not all women object to the look of these kinds of, these room treatments. So I'm sorry if you live with somebody who does. But I'll say it again, the results of this fit out have literally changed everything for me. So everything that I put into this room now, I think is going to sound good. Now, I've also realized there will be some of you who'll kind of grumble a little bit because I've now got a room that sounds great. And what about the rest of us who don't have good sounding rooms? Well, I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. Because if I left the room as it was before with a 1 second reverb time, people would quite rightly grumble, like, how can you possibly, John, review gear in a room that sounds so bad? And they would be right. But I've done this, so now I have the kind of the opposite end. Well, almost the opposite end, because I've still got some work to do. You can hear a little bit of reverb on my voice because I'm talking towards a hallway this way. I'm about 2 meters from it, and that's not treated at all. So that does still give a bit of reverb in this space, as does the staircase that goes up from the other end of the room here. I might have those treated in time, but maybe not in the same way as this. I might try and do something a little bit more creative there. I don't know yet. But it's not pressingly urgent because, as we've shown with measurements, the reverb time of this room between 300 Hz and 4 kHz now sits comfortably between 0.3 seconds and 0.6 seconds, just where we want it. But even if you can't do this kind of thing in your listening space, I hope you found this video informative. I hope you found it a little bit entertaining, or a combination of the two. If you did, please consider giving this video a like down below. If you like my attitude towards room acoustics, because they are the #1 contributing factor to what you hear from your hi-fi system if it's a loudspeaker system, if you dig that, and I've got to say this is possibly one of the most important videos I've ever made on this channel, because really, yeah, the room acoustics will colour whatever gear you have in your room. In many ways, you're wasting your money because the room is destroying everything you've put into your hardware. So I think in a poor sounding room, modest hardware is probably enough. But it goes further than that, because I know that if we had more modest hardware in this room as it is now, I would get a better sound in the seat than putting expensive hardware, like I've got behind me, in this room as it was a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, anyway, that's a very convoluted ending. I'm really sorry. If you dig all of that, then please consider subscribing to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. I would say that the sound of this room with the Vicoustic install does blow the sound of the room without it out of the water. Yeah, I'm being a little bit sarcastic with the terminology there, but you understand my meaning.